here is whether there are really bad leaks in the intelligence community, and if so, what does that tell us about our overall situation right now at a time when, you know, the intel community needs to be a critical part of our operation in fighting ISIS? Joining me right now, radio talk show host Buck Sexton, along with Action Institute Director Paul Bonicelli. Good to see both you guys.
Thank you.
You know, you used to be an analyst in the CIA, so
yes,
I want to ask you first, as a former member of the intelligence community, what do you think's going on here with these leaks?
Well, it's so hard to know because this is the sort of leak that would be really difficult to disprove. How can you know if somebody, if a few individuals are taking it upon themselves to withhold information from the president and then go and saying that to the press? In a sense, it's a really dishonest and really low smear, because how would you ever really track this down or find out? Unlike the leak about the phone call, where you might be able to find out who had access to that within the intelligence community and possibly even in the White House, and track it down. So with this, it's very hard to know whether it's true or not. I find it very hard to believe, because one of the most important things that is taught to you from day one as an intelligence officer is you are here as part of the executive branch. You are serving the commander-in-chief, and you should bring him the best and whatever information he or she wants, period, full stop. This would be a fireable offense. It would be dishonorable to the core mission of the intelligence community. And it's a scandal, quite honestly, that anybody would think this is okay.
You don't quite buy it. But what about the leaks in general? I mean, do you think that the community, the intel community, you say you're there to serve the executive, but it seems as though there are people within that community that aren't so psyched that they've got him as an executive. Is there a danger there that you know, they're conspiring in some ways to undermine him?
Absolutely. There are some people who are clearly using their access to classified information to do real harm to this administration, and I might add, to U.S. national security in the process. Now there's all this discombobulation. There are people that are trying to figure out who was talking to whom. They should be focused on what the policy should be vis-a-vis Russia. They should be focused on how to defeat ISIS. And instead, you have all this administrative chaos that I think is being exaggerated in the media, but it is being created by the fact you have to get a new NSA now and you have to do some restructuring in the NSC. But I think it's also really important to keep in mind that there's probably a very small group of anti-Trump intelligence officers or anti-Trump people with classified information who are leaking this stuff. And so to say that Trump's at war with the intelligence community, I speak to my friends in Langley, they're like, it's an enormous community. So there are people inside of it, but it's really a tiny subset of a few individuals probably that are
Paul,
doing this.
Let me get Paul in for a moment here. To a certain extent, isn't this just sort of business as usual? I mean, you know, he's only been there a few weeks. You're going to have hiccups along the way. There's going to be speed bumps. And look, you know, you got people that are holdovers from another administration that may see things a little bit differently, and it's going to take them a little while to get them all on board.
Yeah, no question that there are a few hiccups. There always are. You expect that. But it's unprecedented to see people that are career officials as well as outgoing officials from the previous administration absolutely sabotaging, and there's no way around it. If you're willing to commit a crime and leak the most sensitive level of information, this is not just the friction in a transition. This is a concerted effort to not be supportive of the U.S. interest while a new president comes in.
Will they get discovered? I mean, do you think that they're going to be able to do the forensics here and be able to trace this back to who exactly leaked in the first place?
I would certainly hope so, and if they can't get exactly back to them, I mean, the idea that this information didn't walk off, it was given to someone, it was either given directly to reporters or given to someone that was willing to share it. Who on the Hill staff knew about this? I mean, you have to start asking, who are all the people who know these things and could then find a way to release them? But it's very much a John Le Carre novel.
Let me turn to, I mean, so you've got the Flynn stuff going on, right? But then you also have just all these allegations about how his people, in general, were effectively in bed with the Russians, somehow consulting the Russians on the campaign side. I mean, those are some pretty big accusations to be making, and I'd only point out that, didn't we hear this before? I mean, didn't we hear exactly the same stuff, Buck? Back when he was actually campaigning, there was the whole thing about, you know, maybe Bannon and this one and that one all have ties to the Russians, and it kind of went nowhere, and now they're bringing it up again?
Absolutely. They've been talking about this for a long time, and what we see is the utilization of classified information that's been leaked to try and once again conjure up this narrative But one would think that if there were something that was really important for the American people to know about Russia's relationship with the Trump administration at this point, wouldn't we have heard about it? In the New York Times piece that ran yesterday, there was a lot of conjecture. There was, well, these people have... Those were old stories. There was absolutely nothing new there. And really, ultimately, what you see is the media trying to create a perception that Donald Trump would sell out his country for the Russians. And there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever. Yeah. They pretend that there's some sort of leverage they have over him, that there's some way they're going to get to him to make him sell out his country. He doesn't need any of this. And they're not about to force him to betray America.
It's a very good point.
It's nonsense.
Paul, I mean, when you think about it, like, you know, this has been one big, frankly, giant headache, I would imagine, at least for his personal life. I'm sure his wife didn't bargain on any of this. His son, his own daughter, Ivanka, has had to deal with her share of issues along the way. Yes, it's great to be president, especially if you can make a big impact and you can really start to change the world in a way that's for the better. But, you know, as Buck says, for people to think this is some giant conspiracy, that he's basically like the Manchurian candidate for the Russians, I mean, it's getting a little far-fetched.
Yeah, I've always thought it was one of the most absurd arguments. If we take all of the characteristics of President Trump that are supposed to be bad, one of them is that he's thin-skinned and doesn't accept any criticism. The idea that he would set himself up to be called a chump, that would be the last thing a guy from Queens would ever want to be called. So, no, I don't see that. I see him, as he always does in negotiation, he lays the table the way he wants to negotiate issues, and you will not, the media will not tell him what to think or tell him what to say about someone. Behind the scenes, I expect a lot of typical tough policies from somebody who's trying to win a negotiation.
All right. Good to see you guys.